Welcome back to the Woodwork Workshop. I'm Joel, and today I'm going to take you on a project that I did a couple months ago for a client who wanted to transform her office wall from this to this. Now, this video is going to be a little bit different format than what I normally shoot, in that I shot it in a time-lapse mode. The project took us roughly 2 to 3 days to get done. So I thought, well, I'll just put the camera up, I'll shoot it in time lapse, bring it back, edit it, and maybe do some narration over the top of it. So, like I said, it's a little bit different than what I normally do. So please feel free to comment on whether you like the format of the video, maybe what we could do better. But, always be gentle, be nice about it. But I'm up for any constructive criticism. Anyway, let's go ahead and get to the action. First thing we'll do is start off by prepping the wall, locating the exact center. In this particular project, we have 5 equally spaced panels that are spread across this wall. So we start by locating the center one and then building outward in both directions. And then when we get to the last panel, we scribe it to fit exactly to the contour of the wall. And of course, have a little bit of time to play with the dog in the meantime. Anyway, back to work and scribing the outside walls. You got a little bit of irregularities that are there from just normal mudding and things like that. So we take the time to do that. And in both outside panels, we also had outlets to deal with, so we had to cut those out. So now with all the panels installed, we can move on to getting the horizontal and the vertical battens installed. Now, one of the things that I'll say regarding how we came up with this particular design was a lot of it has to do with, looking at the room, the vertical and the horizontal proportions, and making sure that your spacing kind of fits the room. So it took a few different iterations working with the client to kind of get that spacing proper. The other thing to consider is you really don't want these battens landing on any structural elements like an outlet. In this particular case, you can kind of notice where the spacing to the outlets is kind of symmetrical. So trying to strike that balance of keeping all those panels, symmetrical and making sure you don't land on something like that you have to deal with. And I think we hit the sweet spot here, and I think the proportions all turned out pretty well. From there, I went around and did some final nailing around the whole perimeter of all the battens and the panels just to make sure everything was secured down flat. There weren't any waves in any of the boards that laid on top of each other, all those sorts of things. Once we had everything all nailed down and secure, I went around and filled all the nail holes with some wood filler. Now, I don't know if it's easy to see from this particular video, but we had a couple nail holes that you can kind of pick out. But it was kind of a necessity. You want to make sure that everything's flush, that all the seams where all the boards meet up are nice and flush and filled so that you don't have any, real, shadow lines or cracks that will show up once the final paint is put on. From here, you just go through and lightly sand everything. It really wasn't, too bad. Wood filler sands pretty easily. MDF sands really easily as well. And you can kind of see, go through, just lightly sand them, and they almost disappear. And of course, for the record, you may not be able to see it there, but I did have my mask on, the whole time that I was sanding to try to avoid any shortening of my lifespan. And one final last step is to go around and to fill the corners where all the boards meet with a really small bead of painter's caulk. Now, it's really kind of essential because whenever you paint something like this, having that gap filled will eliminate any cracks or shadow lines that may occur throughout the year, with the normal seasonal changes that cause contraction and expansion of wood joints and things of that nature. From there, we head on into laying down miles and miles and miles of masking tape and getting everything prepped for final paint. And then from there, we proceeded to add sheets of plastic on the walls just to make sure we didn't get any overspray on them. And if you've ever tried to hang plastic by yourself when it's 98 degrees and 98% humidity, it's quite the task. But I got it done. So I thought, as you will see in the upcoming part of the video. From there, we went into yet another vacuum and a complete damp wipe down of the walls just to make sure that we got all the little dust particles removed for a perfect paint job. Then getting ready for paint, doing some testing into applying the primer to the MDF. Things were going along just swimmingly until, as you can see, the plastic starts to shift just a little. Oops, there it goes. So I had to stop, get back over there, tape it back up, and then begin priming again. Oh, wait, no, more plastic falling again. I'm sure I uttered a few choice words under my breath, but got past it and finished up all the priming. And after letting it dry for maybe 2 to 3 hours, I went over the complete surface with 220 grit sandpaper. You know, even after priming on a MDF, it does leave a bit of a rough surface. So I wanted to make sure that I went over it and made it as smooth as possible. It's a good idea just so that that first coat of final paint lays down nice and evenly. And it's worth all the extra prep work. I always say the key is in the prep work. The painting is kind of, the easy part. And you guessed it, more vacuuming, and followed up with a final wipe down of all the walls just to make sure we get all the dust off in preparation for the most gratifying part, laying down the final paint. Now I decided to start in the upper left-hand corner with the squares up on top and work my way to the right, and then down to the larger panels and work my way back to the left. Unfortunately, as I started to work my way back to the left, I realized I was running out of paint, which caused everything to come to a screeching halt while I had to run back downstairs, whip up a fresh batch, run back upstairs, and of course, resume painting. Now, it really didn't take that much longer, but the challenge that I was having is we were running out of daylight and it was really starting to get pretty hard to see. So I wrapped things up, did a final inspection, touched up a few areas that needed to be touched up, set the fans to dry, and headed out for the day. So it's the dawn of a new day. The first thing I did when I came in the morning was to grab my trusty bright white inspection light. This is ideal for, helping identify any flaws in the paint that needed to be fixed. What I'll typically do is I will add just like a little piece of blue tape to kind of mark all the areas. Then I'll go through, and in cases where maybe it's a sag from putting too much paint on, I'll cut that out and then follow it up with a light sanding to try to blend that in as well. I think I noticed on the bottom trim that there were some nail holes that I actually didn't fill, so I filled those up. And then, of course, me and my friend, the vacuum, went over everything again and then proceeded to wipe everything down with a damp rag and get it ready for the second and final coat of paint. Now, the second coat goes on in the exact same fashion as I applied the first coat, except for it tends to go a little bit faster because the paint doesn't soak up as much as it does on that first coat of primer. From there, we kind of do a brief inspection using the bright light, find some of the bad spots, do some touch-up paint, put the fans on, and let her dry overnight. And it's the dawn of a new day. An exciting day, actually. Today, we get to come in, start to peel back all the miles and miles of masking tape that we put up, tear down that plastic sheeting that was giving us so much grief before, go around, start to pick up all the equipment, take it downstairs, load it up in the truck, and gather up the remaining trash and pieces laying around. Then take up the remaining masking tape, starting with the floor area and then along the side walls. Now you got to be kind of careful here because the tape can have a tendency to stick to the paint, so it's a good idea to take a razor blade and just kind of score the edge to make it a little bit easier and give you a cleaner break there. Then we go into getting the outlets back in and try not to electrocute myself in the process. Of course, peel up the floor, and we're done. Thanks again for watching. If you like this video, please give it a like, maybe share it with a friend, or even better yet, subscribe to our channel. It would be greatly appreciated. Thanks again, and take care.